President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. The judges held deliberations during the break time, and we deemed that the defense counsels have more questions to be put to the witness. However, the time ran out, that is the assigned time, and the chamber may ask a question to the defense counsel for Noon Chi. If you need additional 10 more minutes, the chamber can grant it to you. Please inform the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yes, we would very much appreciate having another 10 minutes with the witness. Thank you. Mr. Witness, before the break, we spoke about 2 different meetings. I would like to focus now, in my last 10 minutes, asking you questions on that second, or on that other meeting in Takeo provincial town. Can you recall details as to the building in which this meeting was held, for instance, or the location in Takeo provincial town? Do you recall any details?
Witness. During the meeting held in Takeo province, it was held to the west of the Psacha, or Old Market, and all cadres and military personnel within the southwest zone attended to the meeting. The process of the meeting was that we focus on the internal solidarity within the party. Second, to strengthen and to expand the cooperatives in order to gain more rice yields for self-sustainability. And the third point, as Tamok indicated, was that we might have a confrontation with the Vietnamese on the issue of Nam Kok territory, and for that reason we need to be producing more rice yields, that is 3 tons of rice yields per hectare, so that Cambodian people would be well fed, and for that reason no neighboring country could attack us. These are the 3 main points that I recall, and there was no specific mention regarding the military affairs during the meeting. And then the meeting was dissolved after 3 days. In fact, the meeting was held for the first day, and for the subsequent days it was kind of a self-evaluation process.
Do you recall anybody who was present at that meeting in Takeo provincial town? Do you remember anybody specific at this meeting?
Yes, I recall that some, the sector committee, who also made a presentation, and but who was in charge of the military affairs also participated in the meeting. And besides the 2, there were district committees. And in fact, at that time, I was in Sector 25, and since no one could attend the meeting from Sector 25 except the Commune Committee, so I attended the meeting. So again, I can recall clearly there were the sound and the but at the meeting.
Talking about what was being said at this meeting and the other meeting as well, in relation to what should happen to former Lon Nol military. Is it your recollection, or do you recall that the instructions in this relating to this matter was clear to everybody? That everybody at that meeting understood what the policy was? Is that your recollection? Did you talk to people about this?
Your Honor, first of all, counsel's leading and suggesting an answer to the witness. Secondly, he's calling for the witness to speculate as to what is in the minds of other people.
In relation to that last objection, that's why I was asking Mr. President, the witness, whether he recalls talking to other members who were present and hearing things as to their understanding of about the instructions. So if I formulate it in such a way, I think I'm able to ask this question. I should be able to ask this question. So, but I will rephrase to make sure that it is not speculation that I'm after. Mr. Witness, do you recall speaking to other participants about the instructions in relation to former military? Do you recall speaking about the instructions in the sense whether they were clear, yes or no?
I can recall that I was jubilant upon hearing that foot soldiers up to the rank of colonel should not be harmed. And you asked me what I can remember during the meeting, and I can tell you that throughout the wartime, even before the entire country had been liberated, Kir Sampon made a radio broadcast that foot soldiers, ranked soldiers, and officers, bourgeoisie, students, and compatriots, as well as they participate in the Liberation Front, they would be pardoned, and the front would judicate and prosecute only 7 people, namely Lon Nol, Simeta, Tam, Sostan, Long Buret, Cheng Hein, and Sơn Ngọc Thanh. This is what I can recall.
And do you remember whether you being jubilant when you heard these instructions, this was also because you had a brother working for in the Lon Nol Republic?
Objection to counsel telling the witness what to say.
I agree it's a bit leading, Mr. President, but I'm asking the witness about an emotion, and I would argue that at this stage of my questioning, and because it's about a specific emotion, that I would be entitled to lead the witness a bit as it goes to his brother. Otherwise, I'll be asking forever about his emotions. But I can reformulate it and formulate it more neutral, if you will. Mr. Witness, do you recall you being jubilant, had any personal reasons for you?
Regarding my personal matters, I acknowledge my elder brother, Srun, served in the Tribunal administration as he was positioned as a third assistant in the commune. Upon his return, he was sent for re-education at Office 204, and that was the typical process based on my objective assessment. Of course, when you walk under the rain, you tend to get wet, and that's what happens to him. So I did not feel offended for that matter, and I actually advised him to adapt himself, to temper himself based on the democratic principle, as 85 to 90% of Cambodian people engage in rice farming at that moment in time. And you had to implement, to adapt your life to peasantry, as people would be lived in cooperatives. And I told him so. And I was rather contented by the fact that I was allowed to give such advice to my elder brother.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witness. Mr. President, I do appreciate the extra time that you have given to us. Thank you very much.
ជាបន្តគឺសូម
President, the floor is now given to the co-counsel for the accused Sampon to put questions to the witness, and you may proceed, counsel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to everyone here present. Good morning, witness. My name is Arthur Verken, and I'm one of Que Sampon's counsels. And I have a half an hour to put a few questions to you. I, first of all, would like to ask you, at which date the region where you were had been liberated by the Revolutionary Army?
សូមឆ្លើយ
The area was liberated on the 17th April 1975. Here I refer to Sector 13.
And when you were, for example, the chief of Chentong Commune in 1971, were you in the liberated zone or were you in the zone under Lon Nol?
In 1971, Chentong Commune was part of the liberated zone or liberated area.
And when was this zone or area liberated? Do you remember?
After the coup d'etat, there were 26 villages in the commune, and actually there was an administrative structure organized for each village by that time. And after the 18th March, up to the 1975, the area had been under the administration as a part of the liberated zone.
In French, I heard 18 March 1975. Is that the date you are referring to? Are you referring to the coup d'etat of 18 March? Is that correct?
March 1970 is the date that I refer to.
សូមលោកម្ចាស់សំណួរជ្រាបបាទ
I'm sorry, because I'm listening to the French, and of course I rely on the French translation. I heard you say something, but I didn't hear what you added. It's not very serious, so let me move on to the next question. I would like to ask you if, personally speaking, you lived through the American bombings where you were staying.
We were under heavy bombardment by the United States. However, the scars from the air bombardment later turned into deep pits and ponds. People in the entire commune of Chingtung suffered from the area bombardment as their houses caught fire, their cattle were destroyed, and some lives were lost.
Est-ce que
Can we say, on the basis of your observations, that these bombing campaigns had an influence on people joining the revolutionary movement?
Your question is on the spot. It's right on the spot, and that led to an active movement of the population.
So a movement of support, is that what you're speaking about? The movement of people supporting the revolution?
And at that time, and it is my understanding, I did not know at all, first of all, about what a revolution was. After Tribunal conducted a coup to topple King Sihanouk, a movement was formed led by Sihanouk, and all the people participate in that movement in order to liberate the country and the territory.
Earlier, when you were answering the questions that were put to you by the Nuencia Council regarding the treatment meted out to the former civil servants and the former servicemen of the Lon Nol regime, you insisted on the speech that was given by my client, Kisampan, which is also known as the speech of the dirty traitors. And the speech was broadcast, as you said, during the war, before 1975. That is the first step. And then you spoke about two meetings that were held after the victory of 17 April 1975, during which the treatment that was to be meted out to the former civil servants of the Lon Nol regime was confirmed, and it was said that anyone ranking from private to colonel would be spared. So on the basis of your understanding, was this a continuous political line? Was there a continuity in terms of the political line between both of these periods?
Allow me to respond to your question for clarification. That was the time when the war just ended, and I was jubilant about that. And on the issue of the situation of the people, both in the countryside and at the cities, they were happy and they believed that that principle was appropriate, as it would strengthen the solidarity between the best people and those who just arrived from Phnom Penh and other cities. Those who were at the best were considered or at least had some family members working or studying in Phnom Penh. They were in Phnom Penh in order to study or to get employment, and after the war ended, they respectively returned to their villages, and they were not to be discriminated. And the message was right immediately after the war was concluded. And as I said, the content of the message was conveyed at a meeting at Trial Mountain, as I indicated earlier. And people who were in the liberated zone participated in the movement of the revolution. They contributed in various forms to the movement and to the people at the battlefield. However, they also had their relatives and family members in Phnom Penh, and you cannot separate flesh from blood. It was a part of an organ, and it could not be separated. And we joined force to consolidate the forces for those at the best people and for those who arrived from the cities. And I was pretty content about that principle.
Can we say that you were happy to see that the promises were met? That is to say, that what Khieu Samphan had said in his speeches, that the promises he made were met after the war. Is that how you understood things?
I would ask the court to ask counsel to ask questions and not to suggest to the witness what he can say.
Mr. President, I don't believe that I'm suggesting anything. I'm just simply putting a question. Did he, as he said himself, that Khieu Samphan had said in his speeches, the same things, that is to say that certain people, and that most people, that is to say, would be spared? And I'm asking him...
តអត់អីបាទ
President, Defense Counsel, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, witness, let me put the question to you again. So, the fact of being happy, was it due to the fact that you noted that that between that the promises were met, was that the source of your joy?
I was happy to hear his message after the war ended, and of course, the message did not convey in a form of a written text, but it was broadcast over radio.
According to you, according to your observations when you heard these directions which were recalled after the war, did you also understand why it was necessary to recall these instructions? That is to say, the fact of sparing the former civil servants of the Lon regime. Why was it necessary to remind this during the meetings that you attended? Do you have an idea about this?
My understanding is that the message was broadcast in order to unify the entire Cambodian population, regardless of their political tendency, in order to join force to build the country. And the principle after the conclusion of the war was to form solidarity in order to build the country.
So far, you haven't mentioned this, but I did want to ask Mr. Witness if you stayed on the Kampong Svei Commune Committee during the whole decay period, or if in fact your post was changed at some stage between 1975 and 1979.
The fact is that after Sector 25 was integrated into the Southwest Zone, Angka assigned me to that Sector 25 in Kin Swai district in charge of Kampong Swai commune, and I was appointed as chair of that commune, and that happened in 1976. Later on, I was sent to Kandastung district, Bang et Bang Khiang commune.
Est-ce que vous êtes
Did you remain a cadre of the regime between 1975 and 1979?
Some
After I was assigned by Angka to Bang Khiang commune, Kandastung district, sector 25, I was appointed as a deputy commune chief for 2 to 3 months. Then I was demoted to a member of the party branch in Bang Khiang commune, and that lasted until 1978.
សូមអស់យោបល់
I
Well, without going into the details of the different posts that you held, can you say that you remained a cadre of the regime during the entire period, or at any stage did that change? And if not, when did the change occur?
I made my previous response without thoroughly understanding your question. Allow me to elaborate a bit further. I was reassigned to Bang Khiang Commune, Kanastung district, as a deputy of that committee of the commune.
សូមអស់យោបល់
Was there a point in time when you became a simple labourer, a simple citizen, during the course of the regime?
In 1977 through the end of 1978, I was demoted to become an ordinary member, and that is all I can say.
Merci.
Thank you. That is actually what I was seeking to discover. But you, therefore, you were a cadre and you were an ordinary member citizen during the regime. And on that basis, I'd like to hear what you have to say about the food difficulties that arose during that period. How can you explain the fact that it was commonly accepted that people didn't eat enough during the DK regime? Was that your impression? And how can you explain this, if that is indeed what was occurring?
បាទខ្ញុំសូម
Allow me to respond to your question. In 1976, in Kampong Swai, people were given a food ration of 20 grams of rice mixed with corn per meal. However, by 1977, and it lasted throughout 1978, Kampong Swai commune had a sufficient food ration for its people, and there was sufficient food for everyone. In addition, surplus was given to Angkar in the form of unhusked rice.
Can we take a step back in time? I want to ask you a question about the establishment of the cooperatives. Before the 17th of April 1975 victory, as far as you are aware, what kind of cooperatives existed already in your region?
The first time the cooperative was formed in the form of a mutual assistance group, and later on it was transformed into a cooperative. And that happened in the Chiangtong commune where I administered, and after the conclusion of the war, a collective cooperative was formed where we ate communally with a common dining hall and kitchen.
Jusqu'à
Up to which date did the peasants who were in cooperatives also maintain private property?
They could hold on to their private properties from 1970 to 1972 when they were still part of the mutual assistance groups. And in late 1972 to early 1973, and it lasted through to 1974, cooperatives were formed. It means that we worked collectively, but the rice produce was distributed individually, and only after the conclusion of the war we ate commonly in the common dining hall and kitchen.
Coming back to the question of nutrition and food during the regime, when you were a cadre,
Une objection, Monsieur le Président.
I have an objection, Mr. President. Should I speak it out now or when my colleague has finished his statement? I think you made the scope of questions to be put to this witness very clear under F2/5, and you explained to us what kind of questions we could ask this witness. Now, for the last 5 minutes, we have had general questions about the food situation during the entire decay period. The colleague may put such questions under case file 22, but I think the point has come where we ought to remind our learned colleague of the scope of questions in this particular context. Thank you. Counsel for the defence, if I may answer, Mr. President. Our instructions are to talk with this witness about subjects relating to the guilt or otherwise of the accused, and I am now referring to that part of 2/1 which says that cooperatives were established, that population movements took place, and that I think it's entirely within the scope of the trial to put such questions to a particularly well-informed witness about the establishment of cooperatives, for example. Mr. President, just to take my points through to their logical conclusion, I refer to decision F2/5, in which you gave instructions to the parties to focus on certain points of Judgment 2.1, which is why I'm raising this objection. If the Chamber believes that it is pertinent to ask questions about the entire scope of trial number 2, then we will, of course, adapt on our side as well. But I really do believe that this should be made clear to the entire Chamber. Thank you.
President, regarding the specific scope of the appeal hearings in case 002/01 judgment, the main focus is on the policies of the CPK and its dissemination within the context of the first and the second forced evacuation. And it seems that your question, counsel, is far from this context. Please try to refrain your contact within the limited scope of the appeal proceedings.
Bien sûr, Monsieur le
Yes, Mr. President. I just point out that I hadn't actually asked my question, so you'll be able to tell me if the question I have to put is within the scope or not. I was going to ask the witness the following question, which was if between the 17th of April 1975 victory and the point at which he quit his responsibilities as a cadre, did he receive any instructions from the center of power to bring hunger to Cambodian citizens within his region?
បាទសូមឆ្លើយ
Witness, there was no such order from the center. There was no instruction for the cadres to starve the people. In fact, it was on the contrary. If any cadre found to not resolve the livelihood issue of the people, then that the cadre would be subject to disciplinary action.
Vous-même,
During the time when you were cadre, did you have decision-making powers? For example, when a difficulty arose, did you have to report to the higher level, or did you have some leeway in these things, in choosing the subjects on which you would report or not report?
I did not have any decision-making authority at all. I could make a request to the upper echelon and in my position, that is to the district level. So any outcome was the result of the decision by the upper level when they ruled on the request we made to them.
aviez-vous au moins
Were you at least able to not communicate things to the upper level? Were there times when you decided that there was no point in informing the upper level?
ខ្ញុំ
In fact, I did for some minor mistakes that happened under my cooperative or my base. I did not make that report to the upper level. For instance, when a plow head was broken, I would resolve the matter within my level and not to report it to the district level. However, if there was sufficient lack of clothing or food at the base, that is for my people, then I would present such a request to the upper level to resolve the matter.
Dernière question.
One last question, if I may, Mr. President, and then I will be done. Thank you.
Je voudrais vous demander,
I'd like to ask you, Mr. Witness, if as you progressed from 75 to 79, you were firstly a cadre and then a normal member of the community. Did you find when you were a cadre or when you were just a member of the community, did you note that there were people who were illiterate?
There's just one point I would like a clarification because my understanding perhaps of the testimony is different than counsel. Counsel's asked a couple of questions. Apparently he understands, and I don't know how the translation came out in French, that the witness was an ordinary member of the community. I understood him to say he was demoted toward an ordinary cadre, that he lost his position but remained an ordinary party cadre. But I think it would be helpful to all of us to clarify that.
Oui, je suis d'accord.
I agree. Mr. Witness, could you make it clear to the court what you mean when you say that you became an ordinary member?
But
Allow me to clarify the issue. At that time, I was demoted to become a party's branch member, that is an ordinary member, and my limited authority was to receive instructions only from receive instructions from the commune committee. I was considered a petty bourgeoisie student since I had a school certificate, and I was categorized as a petty bourgeoisie, and I myself was aware of that matter. In addition, my other brother, Sausum Adistrum, was a third deputy chief of Quarter 6 under the Tribunal administration, and due to his affiliation, he was sent to be re-educated. And I was not doubtful at all about the demotion that I received, because I knew about my involvement and my personal background, and I tried to adapt myself to survive the regime. President, Council, are you out of question now? And if so, please let us know. And the time is also running out, and we should have a break now.
Dernière question sur.
One last question, Mr. President. I was asking about the status of ordinary member, and now we've heard the answer to that. I do have one more question, if I can. Thank you. Mr. Witness, between 1975 and 1979, did you see any cadres around you who, unlike you, because you had been to school, who were illiterate and hadn't been to school? And if such was the case, what was the influence of that particular fact on the commands that were given to these cadres and the work they did? Civil Party Council. Mr. President, December 1977 is the limit of the temporal scope here, so I would ask the Counsel for the Defence to respect the limitations of April 1977 for dossier number 1. Counsel for the Defence, I will be only too happy to do so, Madam.
Je disais donc avec.
Therefore, Mr. Witness, could you please tell us, between the victory and the end of 1977, whether in the different positions that you held, you noted that around you there were people who were illiterate and who hadn't been to school, and what was the influence of that particular fact on the way that they worked? Thank you.
I I had my own principle, and for others people, whether they were illiterate or not, I would not make assessment of them. And I myself was literate. I could read and I could write. And if I were to ask questions or criticize those people, it means that I was poking my hands into their personal affairs, and compounded by the fact that I was considered a bourgeoisie, I would be putting myself in a risky situation, and I wouldn't do that.
Je pense que
I think it would take too long to go into this in greater depth, and so, Mr. President and Mr. Witness, I thank you for your time.
President, it is now appropriate for a lunch break. We take a break now and resume at 1:30 this afternoon. And security personnel, please take the accused to the detention facility and have them return to attend the proceedings before 1:30 this afternoon. The court is now in recess.